I have Dominik Wagner.
Yeah.
Dominik Wagner, in my place, and we have been so thrilled to have you here in San Francisco. This is like a dream come true
I had a great time here. It's so great to be here.
to get you here in San Francisco, and then here in Double Bass HQ
Yes, with the fitting mug.
with the mugs is even better. And we just had a fantastic week of a very American and I think fantastic week. And
I
to
think so too.
okay, great. And to hear you play and to or get to be a part of seeing you teach all these great students. So this is a dream come true. So thank you.
Oh, I'm also extremely happy to be here. I had a lot of fun so far. And yeah, extremely American, meaning, a base camp where you have beginners, where you have advanced students, you have professionals, you have not only upright bass players classically, you have jazz players, you have bass guitar players. I think that is so cool. I think that is so exciting to bring everyone together and to have this feeling of community. I was talking a lot about that with Jeff Braditich because he started the first ISB conventions. So this kind of feeling of let's all get together, no matter what we do inside of the bass world, and have a great time. I think that is beautiful. I really love it.
So Jeff Braditich has been somebody that we've both known for when I was 15 years old, my first bass camp, similar to this one, not the same, but similar. It was in Chicago, and he was teaching in Chicago at the time. And I came in, and I got to watch him all, and then fast forward several decades, and I got to see you perform in Texas and be the first place in this wonderful Bradisich competition, and all the amazing music you played, and just the fantastic way that you played it. And then it's really cool that Jeff has been a part of both of our lives over the decades.
A very decisive part, I
Yeah.
think. And for me, this is actually the most exciting part whenever I'm in the US about the bass world. This openness, this interest, this huge diversity of approaches. And I played a 5-string bass with extension, with a high D string, with an extremely long fingerboard, with a bow that's so long and 216 grams. That's like my highlight of this week. Like Donovan Stokes' bass, so amazing, so amazing, and it really works. It feels great, like and the fact that people do all this kind of stuff, and I think tradition is an important thing to see. Okay, what can we take from the past? What is very valuable there, but also at the same time to always try new things to see what could also work, what could maybe be a great addition, and I think this kind of thinking, it's detrimental for the future because the world evolves of always, and if we evolve with it, then that's the way to go.
I've always thought of it as a double-edged sword here, and lots of people have thought this. We're such a new country, and this is true of Australia and Canada and other places in the new world. We don't have the tradition, but that's also freedom too.
Yeah.
We don't. Who cares? French bow, German bow, standing, sitting, 5-string solo tuning with an extension in regular tuning. Great. We'll do it all.
Yeah, but you say it's a double-edged sword, of course, because classical music, it's not well. I mean, there's also contemporary music being composed right now, but of course, there's a lot of music that has been written hundreds of years ago. So I always, for me personally, I try to combine these two things. I think that's what Mahler said. Tradition should be to keep the fire burning, not to glorify the ashes. And I think that is beautiful. And my fire keeps burning when I try a 5-string with extension and a high D string. To me, that's like, wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Why not?
Yeah.
Why the hell not?
Yeah.
It works great. And on the other hand, I love playing the standard repertoire, learning how do all the orchestras in Europe, what is their core, sound-wise, music-wise, language-wise, and that is also fascinating. I think both can be exciting and beautiful.
I've heard you play. I've been a fan ever since I heard you play. But to also see just how does an artist I'll just say of your caliber, which is about as good as they come. How do they work? How do they work with students? But how do they just even work in general? And it's been really interesting. The more I've talked with people at the top level, the more I've heard about fundamentals.
Oh yeah.
And what did Dominik want every day? To get to bass camp and to spend time on the bass, just working on fundamentals. And I bet a lot of people watching this would like to know what are your fundamentals? What have you done this week, or what do you do when you go back to Austria or you're on the road? Like how do you begin your day on the double bass?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is so important. Like, for me, especially now when I have to teach so much. I love to teach so much, but it's sometimes difficult to find time for myself on the bass. But it is important to get at least a certain amount of time so I can stay in shape myself. Because I feel if I teach but also play all the concerts, I want to be able to play well. I need to be able to play well. So I have a set of exercises I do every morning. Of course, that set changes depending on how I feel. Like, I think that's also important for everyone who wants to have a routine. Certain routine is important, but a flexibility within that is also important. So for me, it's a combination of just sitting, posture, exercise. Oh yeah, the horrible one right now.
Now I feel like sitting up.
Yeah. The bass teaches me a lot of that. First, before I actually start playing a single note, I see how's my posture, how do I sit, how do I feel. Then I just often do some glissando exercises in all different octaves to feel comfortable with the bass. And then I do a lot of scales in different ways, sometimes just up and down, sometimes like this specific scale exercises, depending on what I feel gives me a great feeling, and often a lot of very slow scales, so I can really practice intonation, because during the day I play on so many different basses. And the difference to the cellists and to the violinists, the basses are so different in their size and string length and shape. So slow scales to really focus on, am I not in tune, kinda, but every note, let's say this is an A, this whole area, but depending on the key, the A is either here or here or here or here. So to practice the really slow scales and focus, am I hitting really exactly? This is also an ear training, and also to focus on the sound, a lot on the sound while practicing scales. It's not just a left hand exercise. It's a great exercise can I in every register find the, for me personally, most beautiful sound, and for me personally most accurate intonation, because also intonation is a bit flexible, of course, depending on the person and depending on where you play and kind of what style you play. So these things, and then also some bow exercises, and that takes I would say at least 30-40 minutes I need for that, or I'm unhappy. It feels like, I don't know, getting up without brushing teeth, taking a shower or whatever. That's part of my daily hygiene. I absolutely need that before I want to play anything else. And then a little bit of repertoire depending on how much time I have. But a certain routine where I always keep an eye on, how do I feel, how does it sound, intonation, sound color, shifts, slow shifts, every shift I feel it's comfortable, I feel good with it, and then I go play the repertoire. But this has been so helpful for me, because I will not say how much or how little I practice, but it's not that much anymore, because I just don't have the time. But with this kind of approach, always feeling and hearing everything I possibly can, and having this set of exercises that I can adapt to whatever I need at the moment, that is the key to just stay in shape.
Several great artists I've chatted with recently have had similar thoughts. I want to double click on and one of our great bass teachers here in the United States, in Southern California, David Allen Moore. He calls what you're describing musical hygiene. It's the musical equivalent of brushing your teeth, and you do it the first thing you do in the morning. And I've several people I've talked to, before you teach or play, that's what you do. You come to the bass. have your daily routine, some food or whatever, but then you come to the bass and you get into it, right? This is like
Yes.
early. You don't wait till 10 p.m. or after.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I need that before.
Yeah.
Afterwards, if I'm already done teaching and stuff, I also I'm not so good at it anymore.
Yeah.
Like my sensitivity in the fingers and the ears is gone. So it needs to happen in the morning. Also, I have a certain exercise routine, mostly like mobility stuff that I do every morning and every evening.
Oh.
Yeah, because I think it's also important to just feel comfortable in your body. I do a lot of stretching to make sure my hip, my legs are flexible, my shoulders are relaxed, and all sorts of stuff in that direction. Because if my body is so tense, because maybe I was, as a teacher, I sit a lot. I sit so many hours. I mean, most people nowadays sit so much,
Yeah.
and that is not healthy.
Yeah.
We're not made to sit
Yeah.
12, 13, 14 hours a day. When I play bass, I also sit. Although the bass playing, I sit a bit higher, the posture, I think that is not so much of a problem. I've worked a lot on just having an approach with a really, really healthy posture, but the sitting the rest of the day, that is not good. And that tenses the body up. And then sometimes maybe there's a stressful period there. It's too much work or some difficult situations. And the body feels that. The body feels everything. Everything that you do in life, be it too one-sided of a routine or be it mental or physical stress you're under, and making sure that before I even play a note, I have done something to just make me feel better within my body. That is also so detrimental because my whole approach is, I always say, I said a lot in the camp, your best teacher are your ears. So I need to train them. Your second best teacher is your body and what you feel. And if you are so tense and so, full of tension, you will not feel that much, or what you feel will not be reliable or useful or just bad. So to put yourself in a situation where those two things can really work for you, I can really recommend it to everybody, because also to my students I say that because they practice every day. So lesson is once a week, but practicing every day. What matters is, the lesson is important and I try my best to make it very useful. But the most important is, what do they do when they practice? Because the better they are with that, the faster and the quicker the progress.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I was teaching during several of your classes. I would have loved to have been there with all the students, but I did see your first class early in the week. And you're talking about, and you had so many great analogies talking about movement. And you were talking about, it's like, how do you touch your phone? You don't go like that.
Yes.
This. And that was, and I then, the rest of the week, I pulled out my phone and did that demonstration because it was so great. But also,
that one really works because everyone knows how to touch their phone. Like they do that all day long, but then they go into thumb position like this.
Well, and just you were getting into like just the complexity of movement in general, and like how and it was really, really interesting to just think about that. But that is kind of what you do as a bass teacher to like just get people to understand how motion affects everything. And after
everything we do is motion.
Yes,
in the end,
everything, right?
It's we move, and hopefully we move in a way that will produce something good. That's our job.
Well, I was at one of the basses in the symphony night after your amazing playing on the faculty recital. We both came together. We were both like talking about. I was like, I need to loosen up, and just like watching you play the Gershwin and the Saint-Saëns on this, and everything. You're like a case study and like efficient movement and that I see no tension as I look. And
you don't see, that's good.
Okay.
Of course, I will be honest. It's there still. Like I'm working every day, and some days it's more, and some days it's less. But there is not none.
Yeah.
But I have to be so careful with this because basically for two reasons. In the last episode we talked about my past and my having to deal with focal dystonia. So. Mm-hmm. Because of the dystonia, my motorical functions were below zero, like less good than a normal person who has never touched the bass would have them. So I have to really look out to make everything as healthy and as natural and as good as it can be, because otherwise it will just not work at all. So for me, it's like either really great or nothing. And on the other hand, also through teaching, like teaching teaches me so much, so much. That's one of the things I also love about it, because I mean, I always try to think in every single lesson, what could I do better to be more beneficial for the student? How could I explain this better? How could I find an approach that works better for them? But at the same time, that makes me always think about what I do and how I could do that better. Also sets my standards higher, because I have some students that play so good, not just some, a lot of them actually, and that is so inspiring too. And I think like, gosh, I have to practice. If they play like that, I'm their teacher. I should, I should work. and then that makes me become better. And then I'm gonna push them even further, and they become even better. And that again is gonna make me wanna be even better. And that's like this kind of ladder that I've been really feeling over the past years, which I absolutely love, and who knows where the limit is. I mean, some of the students play much better than I ever will, but that again, I try. One day I practice every day, and one day I will be a good bass player. I tell you, one day, like then we can have another podcast. Although I hope before that, because it might take a while.
It warms my heart, and it inspires me to hear you say that, because it's very easy for people to put someone on a pedestal, and you're like, I can't really imagine better bass playing than what I hear, and so just to hear you say that, I think is actually very motivating to people. It's certainly motivating to me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, glad to hear it.
And one thing we've talked, I had the pleasure of riding over with you to and from the base camp this week. So I've got some wonderful minutes and maybe even hours chatting with you. And one thing that we were talking about, so I've always been curious also, like, what's it like to teach someone who, we have players here like Dashun Zhang, or even like Mikyoung Sung. Like I've chatted with their teachers, like what's it like teaching a lesson to someone at a level like that. But also something that we were talking about. So it's great. You get a student that is already at a virtuoso level, and then you kind of guide them, but then also spotting potential in somebody. And that's such a special skill. You see someone and you can kind of imagine where they might be, and then you sort of see how they are and how they might work. Like, what have you learned? Because it sounds like you are just building. You have a great students, and it sounds like you're building probably the world's best bass studio, if not now, very soon. Maybe now.
Well, I mean, you can, of course, comparing to others, you can never know.
No, of course.
So many approaches, so many great teachers. Yeah. I think the level of teaching on bass is now developing a lot.
Yeah.
I just want the best studio I could possibly have. Because that is so much fun. If they develop really well and then they go out into the world, they win great jobs, they win great competitions. And I can see, I help somebody to have a future as a musician where they can make music on a high level, and as stupid as it sounds, and also make a living from that. Because why is that important? Because if you have to have another job, you can not focus so much on your music making. So that's why I do also focus a lot on orchestra audition repertoire. Because in the end, for most people, for almost all people, that is the main thing that can provide money. And if you're really good at that, then you can go to a really great orchestra and earn a good amount of money while doing something that is really nice. I mean, you play with the San Francisco Symphony so often when you're here, and that is a great orchestra, right? Like that kind of level of music making, that is fun, that is inspiring, that is something you can do for many, many years and you will be happy. So yeah, spotting potential, that is so tricky. I have learned a lot about that, and I think it depends. For me, I make a huge difference between accepting people now for masters or for bachelors. And the age, I've noticed, is also important. Not always. There are always exceptions, of course. There are people who are older who just have so much talent, who just never had a good teacher, who can still go crazy and become amazing. But I've seen when it comes to changing bigger things, of course, the younger you are, the easier it is. And I try to look when I for bachelors, of course, there are always the exceptions. There's people like Sihon Ryo, who won the ISB competition, who won the Bottesini competition, who just won the second prize at Sperger competition. Like, he was insane from the first moment, right? Like, his just ability to play bass. The first time I heard him, I think he was like, the first time we worked, he must have been like 16 or something, and played Bottesini F sharp minor, and was like, gosh, wow. So that's a different kind of work than with other people. But most people, if they apply for bachelor, I try to see, do they have a good feeling for sound? A really good feeling for sound. They can make a lot of mistakes in the entrance exam, I don't care. But how is their sound? How much can they differentiate? And then also, do they have a good feeling for vibrato? Because that, if you really don't have that, that can be tricky to learn. Although easier than sound. If somebody just, even if they kind of play good, but their feeling and their level of sound and colors they can produce is very limited, to open their ears to that can be tricky. That I've learned. So good sound, good level of sound, good intonation, good ears. That is so important. Good instinctive musical pronunciation. It's like how in what style do I pronounce what note? And what I now in the last entrance exam I've really looked for is, how is the connection from emotion to sound? Do they make music? Do they speak? Do they show me something in the moment of the audition? And if they can do that, even if they then for bachelors make mistakes, and even if their technique is not yet developed, I don't care. I can teach them all the technique. But if they have this way of I always say emotion is motion. The best motion, the best movement comes if you have emotion in music. If every movement, every note has something, has an emotional meaning, whatever that might be. If that comes instinctively to someone, I've seen in the past those kind of people, you just need to teach them how to play bass. That's not a problem. But those things, I feel, if they are there, it's also a lot of fun to see. And it's something I really prioritize also in my teaching, to have this connection. It's also for them the most fun to play bass like that, not to play but to speak in every moment, something I try to convey here also. And because music is a language. And so that's something I look for a lot. And then for masters now, because it's such a limited amount of time that you have, it's 2 years, maybe 3, depending on I think you can in Vienna expand a little bit if you want to. Of course, often it happens that people win like academy jobs in the orchestras, and then they're gone for a year. Or 2, depending on what kind of academy they do. And then they come back, so that also happens. Or they win a job, they have a trial year, and then in the trial year, they often say, okay, I will take like a semester or 2 off. And then I still want to work and get better, maybe win an even better job afterwards. So there's all of this. So it's always like, people ask, how big is your class? And I'm like, I don't know. Because like in winter semester, there's at least gonna be 4 people in trial years and at least 4 people with academy jobs. So they're in the class, but they will not be there every week, and that's gonna be impossible. So some of them even are just not gonna come at all for a year, because in some orchestras you have to work a lot, and they just want to focus on that, which is very understandable, very reasonable. And I know some, if they pass their trial, they're also gonna be like, okay, perfect, I'm happy. You can take someone else now. So it's always very, very flexible. And for masters, I only take people that are already really quite far in this kind of direction, that have a style and a way of playing that already fits very well for the market in the German-speaking area, and I can just add on top the extra 20-30% of what they need to then go and be an absolute monster. And then there's people, these exceptions that just come and already can really play well. And then it's a combination of what I do. If somebody can really play bass, I will not say, okay, forget everything, we will start from zero again. That is not helpful. If somebody already can do so much, I just want to let them fly and have the best time they possibly can. Then a lot of the work is also kind of consultation. If you play a competition, which competitions do you want to do? You look at the jury and you see where might there not be too much political influence, because in some competitions, okay, if you're not studying with a person from this or that school, you don't even have to go. So trying to understand, okay, where can you actually go and have a success? What kind of repertoire should you specifically play that fits, that I know will not insult anyone, because some people have very specific ideas of how pieces have to be played. And for orchestra auditions, I totally get that, because you need to fit into the style of a specific orchestra. But for competitions, I totally disagree. I think whoever is just a great solo performer who can convince an audience also of non-bassists should win these kind of competitions. But that's, unfortunately, we know that's always a lot of luck and a lot of politics involved. And I was lucky enough to have won so many prizes, because I see now that was also luck. Because I see so often people playing so well, and sometimes they get kicked out in the first round. And of course, I will not name their names, because it's looked down like, oh, you play so good, but you didn't win a prize, then it must have been your fault. No, often it's just a matter of luck and politics. So kind of this consultation, and then also of when to go for auditions and what audition to go for, or what instrument, what bow to play on. That is a huge, huge thing. Because depending on where you are in the world, you need a certain kind of sound. And I've been really trying my very best to understand the orchestras in the German-speaking area. And that's something where I always learn. Often that's a big, big benefit of teaching in Vienna, because all the top orchestras, at least once a season, they come to Vienna and perform. And then I go. Often I go with the class, and we then meet afterwards, the bass group. And that's really fun to just see how do they play. And also, when they do auditions, I always try to understand what do they want to hear, because that can be so different. It is so weird. Some orchestras, they play like monsters in the group, but in the audition they want something extremely clean. And so trying to understand what do they want and where, and who fits where. There are certain people. That is something I also really try to understand. Of course, that is an endless journey, and it always changes, and it's always the matter of just having good luck, especially in auditions. But trying to understand which natural playing style of a person would fit where. Because every person, that's something I've been changing in my approach a lot lately, every person has a personality. And certain people, they play extremely clean, extremely nice, and every note sounds good. But maybe they're a bit on the, not totally exciting. Not every note is wow, but it's totally clean and perfect. And there are certain orchestras that fit really for that. And other orchestras want you to do something incredible. And if there's a bit of scratching and a bit of out of tune, okay, as long as you have something incredible you have to tell. And okay, then I have students who naturally are more like that. And then setting them up with the fitting instrument and the fitting bow for that. Still trying to shape what they are into a way that can be great for solo playing and can work in certain auditions, but keeping their natural personality at the same time. Yeah, and then deciding where can you go with that. So if a person has a certain identity and I know, okay, for this and this and this orchestra, this can really work, but for this and this and this orchestra, definitely not, then I can spare them the having to travel there and having to audition and just getting, it's just not our style. Because even within the German-speaking area, there are so many different traditions, which I also find beautiful. I'm a big fan of that. Like this, of course, Viennese playing. But then if you look at Staatskapelle Dresden, Gewandhaus Orchestra Leipzig, again, different. If you look at Bavarian Radio Symphony, or then WDR Symphony, or then Berlin Phil, like so many different styles. It's fascinating.
You're making me excited to go back to the German-speaking area, and I like that term too. And I recently did a podcast with Hal Robinson, and you and Hal are both. There are a few things that you're talking about in common, and one is just instruments and the critical importance of getting students on quality instruments. And one thing that Hal is so happy about at Curtis is they've assembled a group of world-class instruments that the students learn on, and
Nice.
then they get their orchestra job, and then the bass goes back to Curtis, but then they find their own instrument. And I think it's really cool how you have become a bit of an instrument acquirer yourself for your students, and it just I think and that's something that I remember talking with Francois Rabath about, is just how playing on a truly great instrument, how that helps develop you. There, it's almost like there's like a barrier to, there's certain things that can't come until you have an instrument that
And the
has
bow.
a voice,
And the bow also.
and a bow, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Actually, for me, that goes back to my teacher, Dorin Mark. He had like, I think, 6 basses that he gave to the students to play on. Yeah, I think it was actually 6 of his own basses. And then the university in Nuremberg, they also had some. But he had 6 really nice basses that he would give the students to play on. And also a lot of bows. So that people... And he also, for those who did have enough money, he also always kept looking and found instruments for them to try. And that, yeah, I saw that as if you really want this to have a great class, you have to go way beyond just, I have my 90 minutes a week and then you go and leave me alone. That's not how it is. Fortunately, the university in Vienna actually has some. They have about, I don't know, like 20 basses or something like that, or maybe even more. A lot of those are just for the projects in the orchestra, because there's so many kind of orchestras. There's not just a normal student orchestra, that's a cool thing about the school. They get to perform like in Musikverein in a big hall, and they get really nice conductors and soloists for the school orchestra. So that is one part. But then there's an orchestra for the conductors. Then there's another orchestra for contemporary music. And there's so many different kinds of orchestras for different kinds of projects. So a lot of the school basses are just necessary to keep all of that running. That is so different than when I was in Würzburg. I know all the basses, I know where they are, I know who plays them. But when it comes to the basses responsible for orchestra in Vienna, they're everywhere. So there are all of those, but then there are quite a few basses that they can use for solo playing, that they can then get for themselves and get from the school. And currently there's like 2 Stadelmann basses, 1 Hindle, 1 Tier, 2 Feilenreiter basses. So those are like all old Viennese basses, which normally are horrendously expensive, which most students could not buy. Of course, finding a really good setup for those, that is a crazy thing. That's where I'm learning so much now. I will actually later this year, I will spend a few days working in the workshop of Jürgen Preyer. He's in Arnhem in the Netherlands, just to learn to properly set up a sound post. How do I move it without damaging the instrument or the sound post in any way? How do I lift it up in case it falls? How do I don't know, like take wood off the bridge if necessary, and all of these like basic set of things to learn them really, really properly, because old instruments, even if they're great, if they don't have a good setup, they will not work. So that is a big thing that I also have been working on. And of course, I also have colleagues, so we have to share the instruments. But I get a few of those for my class. Yeah, and then I buy instruments myself, of course, and then give them to the students to play. There's, on the one hand, that's, buying instruments is also a fantastic investment nowadays. If you find a good old instrument for a good price, I mean, that just explodes. So that's kind of my retirement also. And then it's so fun to see, because if I can provide that and the students who then play on this instrument and see how they develop through that, that is just so much fun. If they can overcome any kind of barrier and just go and be absolute monsters on the bass. So that is also so much fun for me. So yeah, currently, whenever I have some money left, I do recording projects, but I then buy basses. I used to buy a lot of bows, but now I have enough for everyone. Also the school, when I came to Vienna, I said, yeah, but then if you want to hire me, then you need to buy some bows that the students can play, because if you don't even have a good bow, that's okay, great instrument, yeah, important, but a good bow comes first. And the school said, yes, here's some money, buy some good bows for the students to play. I was like, wow, okay, that's nice. And then I also have a lot of bows myself. So everyone has a good bow. That's already done. But that's easier than good instruments with good setup. So that's something I've been working on a lot. And I've been just learning so much. And now I'm also really severely changing the setup and everything on my bass. Because through setting up the student basses, I noticed, but my bass is also not with the best setup. Actually, there's a lot I could improve on that. So that's also something to learn. So yeah, I never stop learning. Like I don't know when it ends. Like every day I'm curious to see what could I do better.
Well, yeah, and good setup. It's such an interesting thing to think about. And is there is for you? We're getting really nerdy, but that's good. It's a bass podcast.
It's a bass podcast. Yes, exactly.
Is there is a good setup period, or is there a setup? Is there an optimal setup for your brilliant Gershwin and Saint-Saëns playing that I heard? Is there a setup that then would differ for Beethoven 5, Beethoven 9, Heldenleben, the orchestra? Like, or is there, or can we have it all in a bass setup?
So that is a very important question. So of course, when I played now here, I didn't play on my bass,
Yeah.
and not the bass that I put any setup on. It was a really nice bass, though,
Yeah.
I have to say. I brought my strings and my bow and my chair. So that's all I could do from that side to set it up, so to say. But that's no setup. Like
Yeah.
the real thing, where's the sound post? How do you
Yeah,
move
yeah.
the bridge? And how do you maybe make the bridge higher, bend the neck, and
Yeah.
all those? That's
Yeah.
none of that I did. So in the basses, well, in my bass, it has to work really well for solo playing. So that's what I do in my solo bass. I also have a separate bass for chamber music. It's a 300 years old Viennese bass, actually, which I absolutely love, because the Viennese basses for chamber music, for me, they fit perfectly. They have this, the old ones especially, they have this nice rich darkness, but they're kind of compact. They're not too, which for orchestra, I also, well, depends on the orchestra and what their identity is. But there I can understand people playing this ginormous 5-string, and then the whole bass group is just a big wave. But for chamber music, I like this kind of focus where you're also not too far away sound identity wise from a cello, so that still you can fit in the other string section. You're not completely outside of that. So for chamber music, I use that kind of bass. And this bass for solo playing would not work well at all, because it's dark and rich, but not a cannon like that. And for solo playing, my bass used to be really just round and gorgeous sound and good focus. Now I'm changing it a lot, because I think I saw that in a lot of bass players that I really admired when I studied in Nuremberg, for example, that they found a way of style and identity that is phenomenal for solo playing and for orchestra audition playing. Of course, in the orchestra, you play a 5-string. So that's a different instrument. It's completely different. Your whole approach, how you articulate. For me, I always say, when I used to play more in the orchestra, for me, orchestra tuning bass with 5 strings compared to solo tuning bass with 4 strings, the difference was as big or maybe even bigger than solo bass with 4 strings in solo tuning to cello.
Wow.
For me, that is a different animal, completely different animal. And I also love that, of course, like 5-string basses getting into that. Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I see that now when some of my students who then get these nice jobs, who then have the instruments from the orchestra, and then they start with the setup and finding what works there. A lot of fun, but yeah, completely different story. So, but with the 4-string basses for solo playing, yeah, I try to find a setup that projects well enough, but still sounds dark and rich, because also I love that kind of sound. Like if we think just about focus and about brilliance, the violin will always have more than we do. That's just how it is. But when it comes, or the cello even, but when it comes to the richness and fullness, no string instrument can compete. That's actually something cello playing taught me. I used to always be, but I want this forceful sound from the cello. It's on the low string, and then I'm missing this and that the cello has. And then I started playing the cello, and I noticed, oh, yeah, I can do these things much easier. Can be much more brilliant, much more focused. And certain colors that the bass cannot produce, I can produce on a cello. But this richness, this fullness is, it's not a word, but it's, I feel that that is a word that would describe it. That's something that we have and that is unique. So I really try to incorporate that into my sound when solo playing. To show, okay, this is a bass. I'm not trying to be a violin. I'm trying to be a bass, the best bass I could possibly be, while still having clarity and brilliance so I can project, but roundness and fullness at the same time. And I try to set up the whole, that's why I'm changing so much on my bass now. Let's see how it's going to be when afterwards, but to have this kind of combination. And that's what fortunately works really well for the orchestras as well.
Well, you're reminding me of those master classes I had with Jeff Radovich when I was 15. I walked into the room and he said, "What does the bass do the best? Resonance. Resonance was the word that he always brought up."
Nice.
And like we want those that clarity you're describing, of course, but like that you want that character of the bass, that we don't want to just imitate the cello or imitate the other, but we want art to bring what we have to the stage.
It's fun. With Jeff, somehow we have so many things in common.
Yeah.
Like once I was talking to, I think it was Paul Sharp, and he would say, "What is like your main approach technically?" And I said, "Minimal effort, maximum result." And he said, "That's exactly what Jeff always says, minimal effort, maximum result." I'm like, yeah. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. I also really appreciate his playing and his recordings, of course. So.
Well, when I did those master classes, this is early 1990s, one of the other students, actually Rachel Kalin, she now teaches here in the United States, her dad had a video cassette recorder, and he recorded Jeff, and he made a copy of the tape for everybody in our class. And that next summer I went and all I did was watch Jeff play, and I learned several pieces. I didn't even have the sheet music.
Nice.
And then the next summer I went to his master classes and I played, I think it was Moses Fantasy, and I didn't even have the music.
Just from the recordings.
Just from the recording.
Nice.
And then I fast forward 30 years or something, and now, you go on your YouTube channel and just the embarrassment of riches that your YouTube channel alone and what you've done, the examples we have are so great of great bass playing, and then watching someone be really free in their playing, and you're, I admire so much about your playing, and I just would remember on Thursdays with just like your approach to sound and your vibrato and just this freedom and openness. And I remember you chat with students in one of the classes this week about your vibrato and how you approach it. Like, how does one develop a vibrato or like to approach a tone? Like, maybe is that innate? What are your thoughts on that?
So vibrato, well, first of all, what is important is to know what vibrato actually is, because so many people don't. It's a movement. It's okay, yeah, but physically, what is vibrato actually? It's a change of the height of the note. So you make the note higher and lower. That is what you do. And a lot of people they move their arms so much, but nothing happens here. And what matters is what happens here. It's a rotation movement. You rotate forward, mostly. Of course, there's a little bit of other, like if you watch at a good vibrato in like slow motion, you see there's also other aspects, but the most thing is it's a rotation. You make it higher and lower and higher and lower. You don't shake your arm around, but nothing happens here. That because you see that so often. So being aware of that first, that's what's actually happening. That helps many people already a lot. And then I think vibrato is always emotional, always. And that's also something where you see people's identity. Like, that was so beautiful to see. I learned so much also from just studying in Nuremberg back in the day when Dorin Mark was teaching there. Because you would see so many top-level students. Like, every student would win a top job. Every student. It was insane. And they would have, especially the longer he was teaching, I was there also in his last years before retiring. And he saw, let people have their identity. And some people just have a wider vibrato naturally, and they go more intense. Some people don't. And that is totally okay. And finding a vibrato that fits for every note, having a vibrato that can have many different kinds of intensities and meanings inside the world that you are naturally. So that is so important. And that's something I also see with my students. And I try to help them to find that. What is your world of vibrato? Don't just try to do the vibrato as I would do it. But that's something I also had to learn. Also, before I thought, this is the vibrato for this for this for this for this. But over time, I also started to notice, no, there are many ways to vibrate every note. And every person should find the vibrato inside of them that would fit. And that way they can develop this crazy differentiated vibrato that fits for everything. Because if they have to say, oh, I have to do this vibrato now, but it's just not their identity, they will not be able to control it well. It just doesn't work like that. Because it is against their natural identity. So being aware of that and then just listening, does this vibrato, for my personal taste, fit for this note? And asking yourself that in every note. For me, for example, my personal approach is I vibrate so ridiculously differently depending on the style. Yeah. In Baroque music, if I play Bach at this point, last year I recorded actually all the Bach Gamba sonatas on with harpsichord. I have to do the post-production. I love the recording and the art and then the post-production. But once I get to that, I didn't vibrate a single note.
Wow.
I don't vibrate anymore in Bach. I also recorded Bach 5, and I plan on recording all the suites of Bach, all the cello suites. And yeah, at this point, I do not vibrate anymore in Bach. For me, I know if people want to, but there maybe, in Bottesini, the vibrato is a huge part of the expression. In Bach, if you do it, it's more like of an extra added resonance, still within a certain character. But for me, yeah, I don't do it anymore. In classical music also, I would say classical music, maybe in the slow movements, vibrato can be much more part of the interpretation. But still the articulation needs to fit to the style. And then in romantic music, there I go. Yeah, I personally go quite a lot. Maybe for certain orchestra auditions that would be too much. But I don't care. I don't need to do that. I don't need to do auditions anymore. So I play how I find it beautiful, because I just play concerts, and as long as I tell a story, that's all that matters. So I'm very happy about that. I take the luxury of just doing when I play. Of course, when I teach, I have to approach it a little bit differently. But when I play, so whatever I want, I can do. That's quite fun. Yeah, and then in contemporary music, depending on the music, it's also again different world. So yeah, I personally really differentiate a lot. But that's also my current identity. I saw also over the years it has changed so much. If I now listen to like 10 years ago, I would say, yeah, it's maybe a bit too uninteresting. And then maybe 2 years ago, I had a phase of really going like, and I listen now and like, that's maybe a bit too much for my taste now. So it always fluctuates. Yeah. Let's see how it will be in 10 years from now.
Well, think about it. It's been almost 10 years since the Brazich competition. I have memories of similar cameras. I was actually in the room when the person operating the cameras was like focusing on you and getting the even on my YouTube channel is an interview with you, not with me, but of your and then to watch your career unfold has been just such a delight since then. And we chatted this week about some of the things that made that competition really special or relevant, or maybe what competitions might do to be relevant, or really like find the artists that are really going to, make the interesting programs, make the interesting recitals. So what makes what are some of the factors that makes a competition truly useful for propelling the next generation of artists, like from the who's on the jury to the repertoire selection? I know we've talked about all of this.
But it's
in
a
the
great
Waymo
topic.
a little.
Yes, and the self-driving car, fascinating. I love it. Now I sent it to my wife and said, now I don't have to ever make the driving license, because I don't yet, but I have to actually, because with all the bases,
Yes, lots of bases.
lots of bases,
Yeah,
and sometimes I'm in the train with 2 bases, and it's horrible.
rough.
Yeah, and sometimes I need to transport more. Like last year, I went together with a good friend of mine. He's in the Giovanni's orchestral principal bass, Felix Leisner, and with 2 of my students, we went in one like little van, not little, bigger van, with 6 basses, the 4 of us, had like a system. We tied some to the top of the, like not outside, but inside the top of the van, like really expensive old basses, and found the system. Took like 3 hours. No, so I definitely have to learn it. But yeah, about competitions. I think, of course, there are many different competitions. It depends on what do you want from a competition. Do you just want to feature a certain composer, like in Bottesini competition or Sperger competition? Or like in the Bredetich competition, just find a great soloist. And I found Jeff's approach there, for me, for my personal preferences, I found that phenomenal. What he did different is he didn't put a lot of mandatory things. I think the only thing was in the first round, one movement of Bach, and I think one movement of a concerto, or maybe a virtuosic piece from the Romantic period, something like that. And then second round, completely free. And I think that is so smart, because if you want to be a great soloist, you cannot just say, okay, I just play the standard repertoire and that's it. That's not interesting. Even for violin and cello and piano, that's not interesting anymore, because people know the standard repertoire. What can you make unique in your programming? So my idea at the Bredetich competition was actually in the second round, I'll only play pieces that either have been written for me, written by me, or arranged by me. Unique repertoire that only I play. And because I that's a big part of what I love about the bass. You can do things that have not been done before, that maybe will shape the future. Big thing at the Bredetich competition, I played in the final the Andres Martin concerto. Now everyone knows it in the US. Back then, this was not yet a famous piece, and nobody played it besides me. And I think that piece is the reason why I was able to win the competition, because I think it is, if you play his concerto well, good luck to everyone else. It's just unfair. But, theoretically, they could have played it as well. They just didn't in the end. And it is just such a phenomenal piece of music that shows perfectly what the bass can do, and in every register, in every style, in so many ways, while at the same time never showing just to show, but always in the sense of music. It's extremely emotional music, which I love. I love emotional music. That's just, I love finding emotional music, but in his music it's just like, oh God. It's still my favorite concerto out of all the concertos for all the instruments ever. So and in the second round, I try to find this, and I think that is a smart thing, because also when you do recitals in the real world, also solo concertos in the classical concert market, you have to tell a story. You have to do something exciting. You cannot just go to an orchestra and say, I want to play Van Hal or Bottesini. They're like, okay. Maybe you need to be focusing on can I do a premiere? Can I do something new? What fits within your cycle? What kind of programs do you have? What, all of this kind of stuff. And in recitals, can I play pieces that people know, arrangements of pieces they know, to surprise them? Oh, Rhapsody in Blue on bass, wow, that's something that can sell. And then I combine it with standard repertoire for us bassists, which nobody outside of the bass world knows. Like then maybe I play a Montag Sonata or a Carmen Fantasy by Proto, and then I play Gershwin or Piazzolla, Grand Tango or whatever. So finding this kind of spot, and I think that searching for that in a competition is great. What I also really liked, that Jeff in his competition, he had non-bass players in the jury, because that's something we talked about a lot, and it's something I just see so much. There are a lot of schools, and I will try my very, very best to always stay open-minded. If somebody plays totally different than what I teach, but it is convincing to an audience, then in a solo competition, I would try to give them high points, even if it's totally different than my philosophy of bass playing. If it's convincing, it tells a story, and it would make an audience happy, it's technically good enough so that there are not like a lot of mistakes, then I appreciate it and I value that. Like you named, for example, Mi Kyung Sung. So different than what I do, but phenomenal. I listen to her, I'm like, wow, this is really quite something. But that's not always the case in bass players. So often in juries, I know if those or those people are in a jury, this and this and this person does not need to go to the competition, because they have their style. And if it's their style, they will give good points. If it's not. also in a way understandable, because if you teach a certain style for 40 years, it is going to be so difficult to just shut that out. And let's see how it's going to be with me in the future. Maybe I will turn out like that. Although I always tell my wife, if I do, tell me. Tell me, warn me. I also have some friends. Tell me and warn me and say that what I'm doing is not good. Be honest. Because I want to avoid that. But it is tricky. So I do have understanding for those jury members who are like that. Because if it's your identity and you've been just preaching this for the last decades, to just switch that off in the situation of a competition, it is a difficult thing. But that's why I find it healthy to have some non-bass players, because they will not have a certain school of bass playing. They will just not have that. They will listen, what is a convincing solo performance? And we're talking about solo competitions. It's not an orchestra audition where you need to find the person who would fit best for that specific style. No, who can convince as a soloist? So I think that's if I ever have the dream, maybe one day I will organize my own competition. That's something I would do, definitely. I think that is a very, very, very smart thing to do, and having a flexible repertoire to see can they make a good repertoire? Can they make a good program that tells a story, that has a structure? Because that is not so easy. I had to learn it the hard way. If I look back at a lot of the competitions, I'm like, I should have played other pieces there. Yeah, I did a lot of things wrong, and I still do, but I try to learn.
I just can't wait to follow along with you over the next years, over the next decades. And this world, there are a lot of detrimental things about these little devices that we have, but one of the great things is that we all everywhere across the globe can tap into what you're doing and hear you play and be inspired.
When I find the time to actually post.
When you find the time. But
I'm doing less and less. I'm sorry, but I'll try to improve that again.
But it's just so inspiring. It's so fun for me to have you. William makes an appearance. I've had a few podcasts where William tries to jump up on somebody, and that's it. But that's the beauty of two cameras. I can
you can cut it out.
Yeah, exactly. But
you can keep it in.
I can keep it in. Yeah. One time the fire alarm went off when I was doing a podcast, and I had to run outside, but I left it in because
nice. You kept recording while running outside.
Yeah,
nice.
Of course. Real life.
Authenticity.
Yeah, authenticity. But it's so fun to I've been a fan of yours since I heard you play, and then
I'm also a fan of all you're doing. By the way, I have to say, I think it's so great. All the content of all the different kind of bass stuff you put out online for everyone to see. That is so important, because no matter where in the world, that's the advantage. People can see what I'm doing, but through what you do, people can see what so many people are doing. And I think that is great. I think that is really beautiful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it warmed my heart to see you doing your own podcast. And it
will continue, hopefully.
I can't wait for more, because I have recommended those episodes to so many people. And it's just really, I've learned so much from the podcasts you've done. And I can't wait for more. And I'm just so honored to get some time with you here in San Francisco, right here at the counter, but also at the base camp, and chatting with you. And I feel so inspired. And like Andres Martin said yesterday at the end of our base camp, it's like, I have my own base camp now to work on all the things that have inspired me. And so I'm going to...
Me too.
Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about your beautiful vibrato, or just watching the freedom that you have when you're playing. And it's
appear to have.
Well, great.
It's not real, but
right. But
sometimes for moments, it's real.
Yeah. And but that's great to hear too, that it's not, and I can't thank you enough for thank you for making the time to come out to California, and thank you for making the time for this early morning podcast.
Well, thank you. For me, I'm anyways living in a different time zone, but for the listeners, we started at 6 a.m.
Yes.
For me, it's not too much of a problem because I'm used, I'm anyways jet lagged, so it's all horrible. But for you, this was actually quite something to
That's great.
do a podcast at 6. So thank you also for that.
It's great. You hold the record for earliest podcast
Yes.
that we've ever done. So
Awesome.